It's meme time, it's meme time. Gather all your friends, it's meme time. It's meme time, it's meme time. The only cure for sadness.
Water 7 Saga Long Ring Long Land Arc. Upon returning from Skypiea to the Blue Sea, Luffy and his crew had no time to rest as they encountered a giant wave created by some sea monkeys. After the brief incident, Luffy and his crew rested and assessed the good wealth they obtained from their Sky Island adventure. They all agreed that they would use the treasure to help fix the travel-worn Going Merry and get a shipwright to help maintain it. After encountering the sea monkeys once again, and a curious pirate ship with no sails or crew, Luffy and his crew reached their next island in their journey. As Luffy, along with Usopp and Chopper, decided to explore the island, they noticed that the animals and plant life were all very long in appearance. As Luffy and his two companions explored the island more, they encountered a nomad named Tonjin, who had been stuck on his stilts for 10 long years. After getting acquainted with the old man and reuniting him with his horse Shelly, Luffy and his companions felt that they had done a small accomplishment. However, in the midst of their enjoyment, Shelly was suddenly shot. Learning immediately that the shot was fired by the pirate Foxy, who was nearby, Luffy momentarily got angry at this foe. Before Luffy could fight Foxy, however, he was suddenly challenged to an official Davy Beck fight. From Usopp, Luffy learned that this sudden challenge was a set of 3 games between pirate crews in which the crew members were at stake. Despite Usopp's warnings, however, and much to the dismay of the crew, Luffy accepted the challenge from Foxy and his crew to hold a Davy Beck fight on Long Ring Long Land. What happened next was a festival-like event set up by the Foxy Pirates in lieu of the Davy Back Games. After the formalities of the beginning of the games, Luffy and his crew decided who would participate in which game. Taking the final and most climactic game, Combat, Luffy awaited for his turn as he watched the rest of his crew participate in other games. The first 2 games of the Davy Back fight proved to be both surprising and emotional for Luffy and his crew. In the first game, Donut Race, they witnessed Foxy and his crew's cheating tricks, and Foxy's exploit of his devil fruit powers of the Noro Noro no Mi. Due to this, Luffy lost Chopper to Foxy. Fortunately, Luffy was able to win Chopper back as his crew won the second game, Groggy Ring, despite the gigantic odds stacked against them. After watching these 2 grueling games, Luffy was pumped for his turn in the final game. With the third game approaching, Luffy, with the help of Usopp, decided to dress appropriately for the match. Donning an afro and boxing outfit, Luffy was ready to face against the sly Foxy aboard his ship, the Sexy Foxy. Throughout the whole match, Luffy was constantly tricked by his smarter opponent as they battled all around the ship. With Foxy's tricks and devil fruit powers, it seemed like Luffy would lose. Despite this, Luffy persevered to not lose one of his crew forever. In the climax of the battle, Luffy was able to thwart Foxy by using a mirror shard obtained from the battle to reflect Foxy's power back to himself. Having slowed Foxy down, Luffy delivered the final blow and won the game. After a lot of rest, Luffy wakes up from being told he indeed did win the fight. Foxy comes to congratulate Luffy on how he fought in the match, giving a handshake gesture, then attempting to throw him overhead, forgetting his arm is rubber. As Luffy won, he gets to choose a crew member for the Foxy Pirate, but instead of sailing their flag, Luffy opts to redesign the flag, then give it back. Luffy's poorly drawn Jolly Roger is given to them, officially ending the Davy Back fight. Although obviously grateful, Foxy vows revenge on Luffy for losing the match. The Straw Hats return to Tonjin, giving him the Foxy Pirates' old flag as a sign of their defeat. Chopper uses it as a bandage for Shelly the horse. Just as Luffy and his crew were done with the dealing with the matter of Foxy and his pirates, they soon came across another one. Sleeping beside Tonjin's house was the Admiral Aokiji. Initially, Aokiji was not hostile to Luffy and his crew, despite him being a marine, and causing Luffy some fear when he told him that he knew his grandfather. Aokiji even helped Tonjin in finding a way to get back to the rest of the old man's nomad clan with his Hiya Hiya no Mi. However, when hostilities began between Aokiji and Nico Robin, Luffy and his crew faced off against this new foe. Despite their best efforts, Luffy and those who fought alongside him against Aokiji were utterly defeated. Fortunately, however, the Admiral simply left a frozen Luffy in defeat, but with a warning to be very wary of Nico Robin. Water 7 Saga, Water 7 Arc. 7 days after the encounter with Aokiji, Luffy had recovered and demonstrated his new frozen pose as his crew sailed to their next destination. They then encountered the giant frog Yokozuna and chased after him, with Luffy wanting to eat him. However, they were forced to turn back after getting caught in the path of the sea train, and Luffy watched as Yokozuna unsuccessfully tried to attack it. The crew went to the ship station nearby and met Kokoro and her granddaughter Chimney, and Kokoro told them that their next destination, Water 7, was home of the world's best carpenters. Luffy grew excited, hoping to find a carpenter crewmate there. Kokoro gave them a map and a letter of recommendation, telling them to find a man named Iceberg. As they continued sailing toward Water 7, Luffy talked with his crewmate about what they wanted their carpenter to be like. Upon reaching the island, the crew was forced to dock at a small peninsula in the back, and they marveled at its architecture. Nami forced Luffy and Usopp to go with her to meet Iceberg. They headed to the city center to exchange their gold for money, and Luffy bought Yagara bulls to take them there. The trio got 300 million berry from their gold and headed for the shipyard. There they met the carpenter Kaku of the Gali Law Company, who revealed that Iceberg was the mayor of Water 7. To make their meeting with him go faster, Kaku went to check out the Mary himself, who to their surprise acted very irresponsibly, although his secretary Khalifa attacked them when they pointed it out. Iceberg then offered to give them a tour of the shipyard. The Frankie family suddenly swooped in and stole the Straw Hats' money, but Polly took them out, and Rob Lucci forced Polly to give the crew their money back. Luffy was awestruck when Iceberg took them inside the shipyard's Dock 1 and unsuccessfully tried to get him to join his crew. Kaku then returned to the shipyard and he broke the news that the Going Merry was damaged beyond repair and couldn't sail any further. Luffy refused to believe that they would need to find a replacement ship, but the workers gave him no option but to reconsider. Luffy and Nami then realized that the contents of their suitcases were empty and overheard Peeply Lulu reveal that he had seen Usopp, whom he mistook for Kaku, with the Frankie family, causing Luffy to immediately run off to find his crewmate. While looking for Usopp, Luffy accidentally fell in a canal, where he was found and rescued by Zoro, Sanji, and Chopper. They soon found a heavily beaten Usopp in the clearing between the city and the Frankie house, and they headed toward the Frankie house to teach the Frankie family a lesson. Upon entering the house, the four of them immediately started attacking and overwhelming the Frankie family, not stopping even when they revealed their boss Frankie had gone to spend the stolen money. By the end of the battle, the entire Frankie house was destroyed, and as the Straw Hats were thinking about what to do next, Luffy announced that he had decided for the crew to bid farewell to the Going Merry. The group took Usopp back to the Merry, and after he regained consciousness, Luffy told him about his decision to look for a new ship. Usopp refused to believe what the carpenters had said, but Luffy stood firm in his decision as the argument grew more heated. Usopp then decided to leave the crew and challenged Luffy to a duel for the Merry. The time of the duel was set for 10 p.m. and Luffy laid around until then. Luffy and Usopp then confronted each other on the peninsula at the appointed time, and as Luffy went on the offensive, Usopp managed to stop him by pretending to be injured. This allowed Usopp to barrage Luffy with a variety of long-range attacks, culminating in a massive gas explosion that dealt some injuries to Luffy. Luffy was able to punch Usopp in the face, but Usopp countered his attack with an impact dial, which he redirected at Luffy. However, the recoil of the dial left Usopp unable to defend against Luffy's next attack, which defeated him. Luffy then bid farewell to Usopp, saying the former Straw Hat could do whatever he wished with the Merry, as he tearfully headed back toward the crew. The Straw Hats, minus a missing Robin, left the Going Merry for good and stayed the night at an inn. The next morning, Luffy heard from Nami that Iceberg had been shot, and the two of them took a Yagara bowl to go see him. They were met by a crowd as they reached Dock 1, and Frankie then arrived to confront Luffy for attacking his family. Frankie breathed fire at Luffy and Nami before jumping into the water and attacking their boat. He then punched Luffy by detaching his arm, revealing that he was a cyborg. Luffy and Frankie continued fighting furiously in the dock when they were interrupted by Polly, Kaku, Lucci, Peeply Lou, and Tilestone. Polly, Lulu, and Lucci attacked and overpowered Luffy, with Polly revealing that the Straw Hats were the main suspects in the attack on Iceberg, as Robin was one of the two attackers he had seen. Luffy refused to believe that Robin had done this and demanded to speak with Iceberg, but the Gali Law workers stood against him as the townspeople subdued Nami. Luffy attempted to escape from the workers as they pulled out sharp and explosive weapons to attack him, but he was quickly cornered and shot by Tilestone's bazooka. However, Frankie then unleashed a massive attack on Dock 1, allowing Luffy to escape with Nami. Luffy and Nami managed to reach Gali Law headquarters where Iceberg resided, and Luffy pulled himself in through the window. As he ran through the building, Khalifa called out to him and let him enter Iceberg's room. There, Iceberg demanded that Luffy bring Robin in to speak with him. Luffy replied that he was unable to, and he was forced to escape outside as Iceberg shot at him. Luffy and Nami escaped the outskirts of town and reunited with Zoro, but they were soon forced to hide from the citizens hunting for them. Chopper then found them and revealed that Robin had told him and Sanji that she had framed them for the attack on Iceberg and would be leaving them forever. Zoro deduced that Nami and her new mysterious cohorts would likely try to kill Iceberg that night, and Luffy decided to go back to Gali Law headquarters to confront her and find out the truth. As night fell, Luffy, Zoro, Nami, and Chopper hid in a tree near headquarters, looking for Robin to make her move. They eventually saw a massive explosion unleashed in front of a building, and Luffy immediately headed toward the building. He was blown into a crevice in another building, but escaped it and pulled himself toward headquarters. Luffy partially broke into a room where Polly was with two masked men, telling them to give Robin back. The masked men then attacked and subdued him, binding him and Polly to the ground before leaving. Luffy eventually managed to squeeze out of his bindings and freed Polly of his before the two of them raced toward Iceberg's room. After initially breaking into the wrong room, Luffy and Polly reached Iceberg's room at the same time as Zoro, Nami, and Chopper. There they found Robin with Lucci, Kaku, Khalifa, and the bartender Blueno, who were undercover assassins from the World Government Agency CP9. Luffy intervened when Lucci started attacking Polly, but Lucci used his Rokushiki techniques to overwhelm him. Robin then told her former crewmates that she was pursuing a goal that she couldn't reach. Lucci told the Straw Hats, Iceberg, and Polly that the mansion would soon go up in flames, but he and his comrades remained in the room to prevent them from escaping. Luffy tried to get Robin, only for the agents to overwhelm him with the Rokushiki techniques. As Robin headed toward the window, Luffy tried running toward her again, only to be stopped and tossed aside by Lucci as she departed. With the fire starting, Lucci decided to show Luffy's group the power of his devil fruit, the Neko Neko no Mi, model leopard. Lucci unleashed a powered-up Rankaku attack that caused the building to start collapsing, and Luffy attacked the agent when he confronted Polly and Iceberg. However, Lucci pierced through Luffy's body with a claw-enhanced Shigan before throwing him out of a building, sending him flying far away. Luffy flew into a narrow gap between two buildings where he became stuck. A while later, he heard Nami calling out to him from a nearby building, and Nami revealed to him that Robin had fallen in the world government's grip in order to save their lives. Intent on saving Robin, Luffy pushed the two buildings apart and pulled himself and Nami away from the outskirts of town, right before an enormous wave created by Aqua Laguna swallowed the area. However, the waves eventually reached and swallowed Luffy, Nami, Zoro, and Chopper as well, forcing Polly to rescue them. After finding out that Sanji had stowed away on the sea train taking Robin to Enies Lobby, Luffy asked Polly for a ship to use to go after them. Due to the Aqua Laguna, Polly refused to do that until the next morning, causing Luffy to decide to take a ship by force. However, Kokoro then interjected and told Luffy that she could take him to another secret sea train. Kokoro took the Straw Hats into an abandoned warehouse where she showed them the runaway prototype train Rocket Man. Iceberg was already there and revealed that he had already gotten the train systems running, and as the crew prepared to depart, the Frankie family came in and pleaded to come aboard so they could save Frankie. Luffy agreed to this, and the train set off. The Straw Hats soon discovered that Polly and the Galila workers had stowed away on the Rocket Man, and Luffy formed an official pact with Galila and the Frankie family to defeat their enemies and rescue Robin and Frankie together. Rocket Man headed toward a massive, deadly tidal wave, and after the Galila workers and Frankie family couldn't put a dent in it, Luffy and Zoro unleashed a combined attack to create a hole the Rocket Man could roll through. Having gotten past Aqua Laguna, Luffy, Zoro, and Nami equipped themselves for the battle ahead. They came to some of the Puffing Tom's detached cars, and Luffy jumped into them to see if Sanji was there. He was immediately confronted and shot by several world government agents, and as Rocket Man approached, Luffy told Zoro to bisect the cars. Soon afterwards, the Rocket Man crew approached the Marine Captain T-Bone, who was running toward the rest of the Puffing Tom. Luffy told his allies to leave this to Zoro as well, and Zoro quickly dispatched T-Bone. Later, Luffy's group found Yokozuna standing in front of the oncoming train, and Luffy told the giant frog to get out of the way. Yokozuna hit Rocket Man off the rails, but after Luffy pulled him on board, Kokoro managed to get the giant frog to join the fight as she got the train back on the tracks. Soon afterwards, the Rocket Man crew had Enies Lobby in their sights. Water 7 Saga, Enies Lobby Arc. The Frankie family approached the Rocket Man again after being derailed by Yokozuna, this time with Sanji and Usopp in tow. However, Usopp was wearing a mask and Luffy didn't recognize him, causing him to believe Usopp's claim that he was a different person known as Sogeking. Iceberg outlined a plan for the Straw Hats to remain on Rocket Man while the Galley Law workers' Frankie family went on ahead to clear the way to the main island for the pirates to quickly charge in and take on CP9. Luffy acknowledged this plan but then proceeded to head out and jump towards Enies Lobby by himself, using Gomu Gomu no Rocket to launch himself over the main gate from the protective fence. Upon landing, he immediately charged toward the Tower of Justice and beat up any marines in his way. Luffy quickly fought his way through the main island gate and pulled himself up past it, and upon landing on the main island, he was surrounded by tens of thousands of marine soldiers. Despite being vastly outnumbered, Luffy was able to terrorize the marine forces, taking out hundreds of them in the span of seconds. Luffy eventually managed to elude the marines and pulled himself up to the roof of the courthouse, where Blueno arrived through an air door to confront him. Blueno told Luffy that he and his allies were committing a grave offense with their invasion, but Luffy didn't care and charged toward him. Despite Blueno using Tekai, Luffy's strike was still powerful enough to injure him, and Luffy was then able to keep up with the agent despite him using Soru and smash him to the floor. Luffy managed to dodge Blueno's rapid attacks, but the agent then used his Doa Doa no Mi powers to create doors in the floor under Luffy's feet, trapping him. Blueno then turned Luffy's face into a revolving door which heavily distracted him, but Luffy was still able to dodge his Rankaku strike by going down through the floor. Luffy and Blueno then sparred some more, and despite the pirate being able to keep up with the agent's superhuman movements, he was unable to gain the upper hand. To enable himself to become stronger, Luffy activated a new ability called Gear 2, where he inflated his blood vessels, causing his blood to flow at a faster rate. Luffy then punched Blueno with such speed that even the agent with his Soru ability couldn't keep up, and proceeded to heavily injure him with powerful blows. Blueno was forced to retreat into an air door and tried opening one behind Luffy to ambush him, but Luffy easily dodged him before striking him with Gomu Gomu no Jet Bazooka. The attack broke through Blueno's Tekai and greatly injured him, and when the agent stayed on his feet afterward, Luffy prepared to activate a new gear to become even more powerful. However, Blueno then lost consciousness and fell to the ground, and Luffy noted that his body was extremely tired due to not being used to the strain of Gear 2 yet. He then shouted out to the Tower of Justice where Robin was, saying he had to come for her. Luffy was able to regain his energy by pulling 2 slabs of meat out of his pockets that he had packed as a box lunch, and called for anyone to come out of the Tower of Justice. Franky then blasted himself and Robin out of the tower, but they were stopped by a fence and had to pull themselves into the tower's ledge. Luffy prepared to pull himself to the tower, but Robin stopped him, saying that she wanted to die and never wanted to see him again. As she said this, Spandam and the CP9 agents came out to the ledge and confronted Luffy. At this point, the rest of the Straw Hats made it up to the courthouse roof, and as they joined Luffy in facing Robin and CP9, Luffy told Robin that she could choose to die if she wanted, but he wanted her to do so while she was with them. Robin responded that the entire world was against her, and she didn't want the Straw Hats to consider her a burden given what they would face if she was with them. Spandam backed up that assertion, using it as an opportunity to boast of the world government's great might while pointing to the official flag sailing above him. However, Luffy responded by telling Sogeking to shoot down the flag, and the sniper did so, burning it up. Spandam was left aghast that Luffy directly declared war against the world government, and Luffy replied that he was fine with that. He then told Robin to say she wanted to live, and Robin tearfully did so. As the drawbridge between the courthouse and Tower of Justice was lowered thanks to the Franky family, the Straw Hats prepared to invade the tower. However, the drawbridge was stopped by a mortar strike, and Spandam quickly tried to lead Robin away. Soon afterwards, though, Nami received a call from Kokoro that she was piloting the Rocket Man to the Tower of Justice. Upon hearing this, Luffy grabbed all of his crewmates and jumped into the chasm between the courthouse and tower, and landed on Rocket Man as it leaped from the drawbridge and flew toward the tower. The train crashed into the tower before coming to a halt, and as the Straw Hats recovered from the wreck, they were confronted by the CP9 agent Fukuro. Fukuro revealed that Spandam and Lucci were taking Robin to the gates of justice, and Robin was chained by handcuffs made of sea stone that were unbreakable and prevented her from using her powers. Fukuro and the 4 other CP9 agents in the tower each possessed a key, only one of which would unlock the handcuffs. Luffy tried attacking Fukuro to get his key, and the agent departed, and Luffy tried going after him but was held back by Zoro. The Straw Hats and Franky told Luffy to go directly after Lucci and Robin while they took on the other CP9 agents. Luffy ran up the stairs and managed to reach the room that the agents and Robin had just been in, though it was now deserted. He then started running towards the gates of justice. He made it to the end of the tower but found nothing but water in between it, and so tried to think of a way to get across. He tried rowing a small boat there, but the rough ocean currents destroyed the boat and left him floundering in the water. Fortunately, Chimney and Gonbei arrived and retrieved Luffy from the water, having come to tell him that there was an underground passage from the tower to the gates. The trio raced down a flight of stairs and came to a giant steel door. Despite the door being locked, Luffy was able to break through it by activating a new gear called Gear 3, and Chimney and Gonbei were shocked upon seeing Luffy shrink to the size of a child after using it. However, Luffy quickly returned to normal size as he ran down the hall toward Robin. Luffy eventually ran to a door which he was able to kick through, and found himself in a large storeroom in a tower propping up the Bridge of Hesitation. There he was confronted by Lucci. Luffy tried to get through to keep chasing after Robin, but Lucci stayed in his way and the two clashed, with their powerful strikes resulting in heavy collateral damage. Luffy managed to catch Lucci off guard with his speed and throw the agent aside, but Lucci quickly recovered and kicked the pirate before he could run out of the room. Their sparring was interrupted when Franky suddenly arrived, possessing 2 of the CP9 agent's keys. He offered to help Luffy fight Lucci, but Luffy told him to keep going and save Robin. Lucci managed to overpower Luffy so he could attack Franky. However, Luffy then activated Gear 2 and hit the agent with powerful lightning-fast punches. Lucci transformed into his human leopard hybrid form and tried to attack Franky again, but Luffy successfully overwhelmed him with Gear 2, enough to allow Franky to exit the room. Luffy and Lucci continued sparring, but the agent then used a Rankaku strike to rip a hole in the wall that would flood the underground passage with seawater, saying that Luffy's crewmates would either drown or be bombarded by the incoming buster call and he would be incapable of saving them. The room where they were in started filling up with seawater, and Luffy followed Lucci up to the room above, which was above sea level and would not be flooded. Lucci said that Luffy could go and help his friends if he wanted, but Luffy responded that if he left Lucci alone, the agent would kill all of them. Lucci was able to overpower and injured Luffy with some advanced Shigan, Rankaku, and Tekai techniques, so Luffy decided to show him Gear 3. Luffy blew into his thumb and inflated the bones in his right arm, making it equivalent in size to a giant's. He then threw a punch at Lucci with his giant right arm, demolishing the wall and tower in front of him and launching the agent out of the structure. Afterwards, Luffy transferred the air to his torso and pulled himself onto the marine battleship that Lucci had fallen into, where he proceeded to transfer the air to his leg and unleash a powerful stomp that wreaked tremendous destruction. Lucci leaped onto the mast and transformed into his full leopard form, allowing him to maul Luffy's left shoulder. Luffy brought the air to his torso to repel Lucci, but proceeded to be overwhelmed by the agent due to Gear 3 reducing his speed. However, Marine Vice Admiral Onigumo then had his ship fire at the ship Luffy and Lucci were on in order to kill the former, but Luffy was saved from its destruction when he was forced to release the air inflating his body, blowing him back to the prop towers where he was before. But since he was the size of a child again due to Gear 3's side effects, Luffy tried to run and hide from Lucci until he returned to normal. This tactic didn't work, as Lucci found Luffy and assaulted him with Shigan before smashing his small body up against a wall, trapping him. Fortunately, however, Lucci became affected by damage that Luffy had given him earlier, and was stopped from unleashing a deadly attack, and enough time passed to allow Luffy to return to normal size. Luffy then activated Gear 2 once again, despite the potentially debilitating effect it could have on his body. Luffy was able to overwhelm Lucci with his attacks, but Lucci then attacked him with a new technique called Rokuogan, a Rokushiki ability accessible to those who had mastered the normal 6 techniques. The technique created a shockwave that damaged Luffy internally, much like an impact dial, though with significantly greater power. As the walls around them started to crumble from the bombardment, Luffy looked outside and saw his crewmates on a nearby part of the bridge, encouraging him. Luffy resumed fighting Lucci, but the agent noted that his Gear 2 power appeared to have lost its edge before attacking the pirate with another Rokuogan strike, causing him to collapse to the floor. However, Usopp then called out to Luffy, having removed his Sogeking mask, and also called out Lucci, saying he would be the agent's next opponent. Luffy protested, and Usopp said he would need to get back up and win if he wanted to keep Lucci away from him, saying they would all go back together once the agent was defeated. Spurred on by Usopp's words, Luffy got back up and exchanged a flurry of blows with Lucci. Lucci then wrapped his tail around Luffy's body and struck him with another Rokuogan. But despite taking that attack, Luffy quickly got up. He then assaulted Lucci with a flurry of Gear 2 punches in a technique called Gomu Gomu no Jet Gatling, which sent the agent crashing into the wall and knocked him unconscious. Victorious at last, Luffy shouted out to Robin that they would be going back together. However, Luffy then collapsed from his wounds, and though he heard Usopp's call to join them on an escape ship and became surrounded by all 5 of the Buster Call battleships, he stated that his body couldn't move at all. However, Usopp had Robin push Luffy off the edge of the prop tower with her ability, and as Luffy fell toward the ocean, the Going Merry suddenly resurfaced, giving the Straw Hats a chance to escape. Luffy fell into the ocean but was rescued by Kokoro, who tossed him onto the Merry. As the Straw Hats collected themselves, Robin thanked everyone for saving her, and Luffy grinned in response. The marine battleships prepared to fire at the Merry, but their aim was thrown off due to Sanji having closed the gates of justice, which created violent whirlpools. One of the ships managed to lock onto the Merry and fire, but Zoro and Sanji used Luffy's body to intercept the cannonballs and launch them back at the Marines. Frankie used coup de vent to blast the Merry away from the battleships, allowing the Straw Hat to sail away from Enies Lobby victorious. Once they reached safety, Usopp put his Sogeking mask back on and lied that Usopp had gone off on another boat, which Luffy believed. The Straw Hats then encountered a Galila ship captained by Iceberg, and as this happened, the entire bow of the Merry nearly broke off entirely. Luffy begged Iceberg to help Merry, saying the ship was essentially their crewmate. However, Iceberg replied that the best thing to do for the Merry would be to let it rest. After a few seconds, Luffy solemnly accepted this, and after his crew had evacuated the ship, Luffy used the torch to set it on fire before disembarking onto a small rowboat. Luffy thanked the Merry for all it had done for them, and as the ship burned, it stunningly spoke to the crew like it had during its arrival on Enies Lobby, apologizing for being unable to carry them further. Merry's words caused Luffy to start bawling as he apologized to the ship for treating it as poorly as he had. However, Merry then responded that it was happy to have gone this far, and thanked the Straw Hats for taking care of it as it broke down and sank to the sea. Water 7 Saga post-Enies Lobby arc. As everyone relaxed at Water 7 2 days later, Frankie decided to build a ship for the crew out of the special wood called Atom Wood. However, at that point, Marines led by Vice Admiral Garp broke into Iceberg's mansion where everyone was staying and punched the still sleeping Luffy to wake him up. To everyone's shock, Luffy revealed that Garp is really his grandfather. and revealed the training Garp put him through as a child. Garp soon told Luffy about the 4 emperors and how Shanks was one of them. Soon after, Garp asked Luffy about his meeting with his father, as Luffy was surprised to learn he had a father and he encountered him in Logtown. Garp casually revealed the name of Luffy's father, known as Dragon the Revolutionary, who is considered by the world government to be the worst criminal in the world. Luffy didn't know of Dragon, as he is met with surprise from his crew and friends before he turned to Robin, who informed him why his father was infamous. Afterwards, Garp said that it was supposed to be a secret. Sometime after, Sanji revealed to the Straw Hats that Usopp was planning to rejoin the crew. While Luffy, Nami, and Chopper wanted him to rejoin and planned to invite him back, Zoro insisted that Luffy should be a firm captain on his position, and Usopp shouldn't return so easily, as he should return on their terms, not his. Zoro even threatened to leave the crew if Usopp was allowed to rejoin without asking for forgiveness for his behavior. Luffy understood the message and agreed with Zoro's view of the situation. A few days later, Chimney, Gonbei, Mozu, and Kiwi burst in on the Straw Hats to tell them their new ship was complete. Shortly after, Zanbai and the rest of the Frankie family also appeared, revealing to the Straw Hats their new bounties. They then revealed that their boss also received a bounty, which led them to the Straw Hats, who had begged them to let them join their crew. After the Straw Hats, they excitedly left to Scrap Island, where their new ship was moored. There, Iceberg unveiled their new caravel, much to the pirates' delight. After briefly exploring the ship, Luffy asked Iceberg where Frankie was. Having discerned that the young captain wished to recruit Frankie as their shipwright, Iceberg advised Luffy that if he really wanted Frankie, he would need to use force. With the help from the rest of the Frankie family, Luffy got a hold of Frankie's underwear as a bargaining chip to get him to join his crew. Frankie simply posed naked, unabashed, and said, "I'm still a man, naked." Meanwhile, Sanji came running with Zoro to tell everyone that Vice Admiral Garp had sailed on the opposite shore to attack position. Luffy then threw Frankie's swim briefs back on and told him to sail with them. Frankie then stated that he did want to see his dream ship reach the end of the world and become the greatest ship ever built. Frankie agreed to join after this. Shortly after, Garp appeared and started attacking the Straw Hats and their new ship. At that moment, Usopp tried to rejoin the crew, but because of Zoro's speech, he was ignored until he apologized. During the struggle between Garp and the Straw Hats, Usopp finally apologized and admitted that he wanted to rejoin. With that note, Luffy tearfully accepted him back into the crew. With Usopp and Robbie's return, Frankie wished to grant the ship its new name, and while most of the Straw Hats gave some suggestions, with Luffy giving some of the most ridiculous ones, they in the end went with Iceberg's suggestion, the Thousand Sunny. After escaping Garp's onslaught of iron balls using their new ship's emergency escape feature, the Coup de Burst, the newly formed Straw Hat crew sailed off to find their next adventure.
L is for lovers who love one another. A is for ass, of which I like to eat. U is for you're the only one for me. G is for the only gamer I see. H is for happy, I always feel it. When you put it together, what do you get?